recently made a video about a few things that I miss about the US since I moved to Germany 5 years ago. I also made a video a while ago about why I have no intention of moving back to the US, because my quality of life is dramatically better here in Germany. So, even though there are some things that I miss, they aren't enough for me to want to go back. As a counterpoint to the video on the things that I miss, in today's video, I want to focus more specifically on the things that I don't miss about the US. And let me just say at the outset here that I know that Germany is by no means perfect. It definitely has its share of problems, but for me, when compared to the US, Germany is simply better. Okay, let's take a look at 6 things that I don't miss about the US. Los geht's. First, I want to talk about everyone's favorite or not so favorite topic, politics. Unless you're a complete technophobe or a hermit who lives in the woods far removed from the rest of civilization, you're probably aware of what a complete disaster the US is right now politically. And it just seems to get worse every day. Before I moved to Germany, I lived in the US for a long time. And I feel like I witnessed the country slowly unraveling over time. From my perspective, it seemed that the country went from being able to work together and do big things to a country where people just seemed to fight about everything and the possible became impossible. The one thing during my time living in the US that I thought was really going to turn the country around, the election of Barack Obama, instead just brought out the absolute worst in the culture. All of the racism and hatred and fear went into overdrive, and the country really started to spiral into the complete unraveling that we've seen for the past 10 years. Of the 2 major political parties in the US, one now appears to be fully against democracy, and the other is only marginally better. When I voted in the German federal election earlier this year, there were 17 political parties on the ballot, not 2. And the results were purely based on a vote count, nothing else. That's what I believe democracy looks like. A ranking in 2020 by the Democracy Matrix Project labeled the US as a deficient democracy, and it came out number 36 out of 176 countries. Germany, in comparison, was considered a working democracy and ranked number 5 on the list, just behind 4 Scandinavian countries. For all of these reasons and more, it seems to me that the US is in terrible shape politically, and it seems like it's only getting worse. Anyways, I definitely don't miss being subjected to all of that political chaos every day. One major contributor to all of the division in the US is the news media. The 3 major news networks there never seem to run out of ways to cause division. First of all, they present every issue and news story as if there are only 2 ways to look at them, conservative or liberal. Then, they bring on political commentators representing the interests of one party or the other, and then they all yell at each other all day long.
I made a special effort to come on the show today because I have, privately, amongst my friends, and also in occasional newspapers and television shows, mentioned this show as being bad. And I felt that wasn't fair, and I should come here and tell you that it's not so much that it's bad as it's hurting America.
And all of this is simply done for ratings and for profit. None of these US news networks seem interested in providing any objective information. Almost every single issue and news story is presented through a political lens, or political pundits, instead of real experts, are asked what they think. And to get people to watch more, they try to turn everything into an emergency or a controversy where everyone is on edge and taking sides. They make everything, even entertainment, political. It's completely insane. The news media there also focuses almost exclusively on what's happening in the US, often ignoring the rest of the world. I have to say that it's such a relief for me now to watch the much calmer and generally more neutral news reports here in Germany. I definitely don't miss being pummeled by the crazy US news media every day. Another thing that I was happy to escape when I left the US was the constant barrage of advertising. The ads there drove me completely nuts, and they were really difficult to avoid. Annoying commercial breaks interrupted most shows or series every 10 minutes or so, and these weren't the nice, calm commercials like the ones you usually see here in Germany. No, nearly all US ads are fast-paced, loud, obnoxious, and designed to make you feel bad about yourself.
Little Caesars Hot and Ready Lunch Combo is ready when you walk in. Perfect for the world's most impatient people. Get a lunch combo with 4 slices of deep dish pizza and a soda for just $5. Only at Little Caesars.
Pizza, pizza.
Their goal seems to be to trick you into buying stuff that you don't really need. To make matters worse, you'll find even more ads along the freeways, where there are tons of billboards everywhere, cluttering up the countryside. Overall, I find that life in Germany, where the advertising isn't so overwhelming, is much calmer and happier. And I definitely do not miss being constantly bombarded by so many ads all the time. Another thing I don't miss about the US is the values embraced by the mainstream society there. From my perspective, American culture puts way too much emphasis on wealth accumulation, competition, and superficiality. One widely embraced saying there is, "He who dies with the most toys wins." But to afford these toys, like fancy cars and large homes, many Americans are actually drowning in debt. And even though the US is considered a wealthy country, it doesn't provide many basic protections for its people. For example, there's no universal health care or paternity leave there. Maternity leave is very limited, and the federal minimum wage is very low, and higher education is not subsidized. This, in my opinion, is because American society values profits over people. Personally, I prefer living in a country that places more value on its citizens' welfare than on wealth accumulation, competition, and superficiality. So yeah, I absolutely don't miss living in a country with such messed up values. The overall culture in the US also has many other elements that I don't miss. First, it seems like your whole identity there is based on your profession. Work is always a popular topic of conversation in the US. Where do you work? How's work going? How long have you worked there? In fact, these are usually the first questions you'll hear when meeting someone new. And there's this underlying goal of judging everyone based purely on the work that they do and how much money they can make. I can hardly remember any times when anyone bothered asking me about my hobbies, places I've traveled to, or any of my other interests. And even as focused as the whole culture is on politics, it's a big no-no to discuss anything political with people you don't know. In fact, many families won't even speak openly about politics with each other to avoid arguments. Another thing that I find really annoying about the culture is when Americans assume that their country is the greatest in the world. And unfortunately, this often comes with a lack of attention or interest in what's going on outside of the US, unless it's bad news. Over the years, I've also noticed American culture is becoming even more individualistic and competitive. Wanting to serve or benefit the community can actually be seen as a weakness. Instead, everything seems to be framed in terms of individual achievements without recognizing all of the people who have helped out along the way. All this emphasis on wealth, competition, superficiality, exceptionalism, and individualism in the US culture just don't sit well with me. So other than some of the music and the entertainment there that I can still access here, I pretty much don't miss anything about the US culture. This all leads me to the final thing that I don't miss, and that's stress. Living in a country of extremes where everyone is competing with each other is very stressful. The pace of life is very fast in the US, especially on the East Coast and in the Northeast where I lived for many years. Even after living in Berlin, Germany's so-called laid-back capital, for 5 years, I still find myself walking around very quickly because of so many fast-paced years in the US. I still feel like I have to rush to get things done, even though everything around me is moving at a much slower pace. It's pretty bad. Hopefully I'll eventually unlearn this terrible behavior. Anyways, when it comes to stress, a Gallup poll in 2022 ranked the US 13th in the world, with 52% of respondents answering yes when asked, "Did you experience stress during a lot of the day yesterday?" Germany, on the other hand, ranked 92nd, with 31% saying they felt stress. So yeah, it seems that people in the US are pretty stressed out in comparison. And as a result, some Americans feel that they have to resort to all kinds of unhealthy behaviors just to cope and keep up. For example, the US has the highest consumption of illegal and prescription drugs in the world. And many Americans also have very unhealthy diets, with 43% of the population being obese. At least some of this is probably due to the comfort eating in response to all of the stress there. In fact, average life expectancy in the US is lower than other developed countries in the world. And a recent study by Brown University found that the life expectancy of the richest American was shorter than the average European. Anyways, all this stress and what some people in the US are doing to manage it is just bad all around. So I'm very happy that I don't have to deal with all of that stress anymore. All of these things that I've mentioned, broken politics, distorted news, aggressive advertising, toxic culture, and an epidemic of stress add up to a very poor quality of life in the US. And I don't miss any of it. I'm so happy that I left all of that behind. Listen, I'm still hopeful that the US can turn things around and go in a more positive direction again, but based on my own experience living there, it's hard for me to see any clear path forward. And that's a big part of why I left. If your experience living in the US has been more positive than mine, that's great, and I wish you all the best. But for those of you living in the US who see things the way I do, I hope you too have the opportunity to build a better life for yourselves elsewhere, whether that's in a country like Germany or someplace else. Okay, that's it for now. Thanks for watching, if indeed you still are. Take care. Tschüss. Bis später.